Hello, greetings. Today is, the date of these slides is September 16th, 2022. Today is actually September 17th, 2022, so I'm making a video like a day later. But let me start by saying that I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. So I was thinking about these failures to deliver and communicating the information effectively and what the failures to deliver actually mean. Let me state that I have made two videos about the AMC APE, AMC Preferred Equity, which is what APE stands for, failures to deliver. And this is a third video on it, actually, because I couldn't help thinking about it. There's something that needs to be, there's something that basically needs to be communicated about this, which is kind of significant. And by making a video, I also have to figure out what my own thoughts are about it. So anyway, check out the previous two videos. The first one talks about how to extract the failure to deliver information from the SEC. And the second one talks about how the large number of FTDs are causing problems with Adam Aron's plans on AMC. But let me start by doing a quick update, I guess, or a quick, because not everyone would know necessarily what I'm talking about with FTDs, failures to deliver, etc. So this is a quote that was taken from the SEC website, sec.gov. Talks about investor pubs, and it's in their reg show section. It talks about something called naked short sales. For those who are not sure or who are new to stocks, a short sale is when you sell something that you don't own and you hope to buy it back at some point later. This describes what a naked short sale is. And a naked short sale is, in a naked short sale, the seller does not borrow or arrange to borrow securities in time to make delivery to the buyer within a standard settlement period. The settlement period is T+2, by the way, which means trade plus 2 days. As a result, the seller fails to deliver securities to the buyer when the delivery is due, known as a failure to deliver, or fail. Okay. So traditionally, when you make a short sale, right, what you have to do is you have to find someone who has the stock at hand, borrow those shares from that person. Okay, sell those shares in the open market. That's your short sell. Now you owe a debt of stock to somebody else, and you hope to pay back that debt at a lower price. That's what a short seller does. A naked short seller does not arrange to borrow the stock. He just sells the stock. So he creates phantom shares, and then he hopes to eliminate those phantom shares at some point later on by buying back those phantom shares at a lower price. Okay? So the SEC, the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission, they release FTD data, or fail to deliver data, and it's part of something called CNS data. CNS stands for Continuous Net Settlement. So they're continually trying to settle these debts, these trades, and I'll explain all that as we go along. Anyway, the U.S. SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, releases FTD data twice a month. Okay, and they have recently released the second half of August 2022, and that was the important piece of information. So I downloaded that data and I processed it in the manner as described in this video. I won't go into the nature of the processing, but essentially what it does is this is a file that contains all the fails to deliver from all various different companies that are sold on U.S. exchanges, and this just extracts out the APE, or AMC Preferred Equity data from all of this other data that's out there, right? Because we don't necessarily need to see the fails to deliver of other stocks apart from APE. All we want to look at is APE shares and how many of those shares fail to deliver. So I processed all of that. I processed the information in raw form that the SEC provides and extracted out just the APE data, or the APE shares data, right? And this is what I wound up with. I wound up with about 6 lines on a spreadsheet, okay? The first line is a settlement date. Second line is a CUSIP number. Third line is a symbol. I mean, the third column is a symbol. The fourth column is the quantity of fails. The fifth column is a description, and the sixth column is the price at the settlement date. Not the price at when the stock was originally traded, but at the settlement date, okay? So, as we can see, the fails start out at 43 million. Now, if you're not aware, 43 million is a very large number. This is a large number of stocks that failed to be delivered to whoever bought the shares. This is considered to be, this is considered to be scandalous, right? I mean, if you buy something and from someone else who claims to have it, right, or have ownership of it, and they say, hey, I'll get that to you in 2 days, right? That's basically what a trade is, right? They have to settle in 2 days. They said, hey, I'll get that to you in 2 days. And in fact, they don't get that to you in 2 days. They get that to you sometime later because they don't own the stock and they have to get the stock from somewhere. So, so that's basically what's going on. That's what a failure to deliver is. Okay. This, I just put the fails to deliver into a chart format. And as we can see, 43 million shares. That's a humongous amount of fails to deliver. The number of fails to deliver over time decreased, however, right? And it decreased over time as they were able to find the stock, I guess, on the open market, buy it from someone or get it from somebody, and then settle out those stocks, right? Or, well, they were able to settle the stocks. I'll talk about what settlement means necessarily. It doesn't necessarily mean that they bought the stocks, by the way, which is something you might expect, right? You might think that, no, getting the stock is closing the position. They did not necessarily close, they settled. Okay, I'll describe what settlement means. So, so I've taken out, of the chart data, right, I said, let's look at where the max FTDs were, right? The max FTDs were 43 million. So I made a line for that. This is key information, right? And I said, what's the price at that time of the max FTDs, which was $7.02, and what's the date of that? The date was 8/24. We'll get to what the date matters later on. But the date was 8/24. And then I said, well, we also want to look at the day after the max FTDs, right? Because sometimes the prices go up after that. And sure enough, the price did go up slightly after that. And that was the following day. That also happened to be the same day as the max APE price. Okay, that also happened to be the day of the max price. So there's a line for each one of those, but it's the same day. It's the same item. And we also want to look at what happens the day after the max price, right? Maybe there were more FTDs at that point, which got settled. Maybe the price went down. So it's some key interesting points to look at. Basically, 43 million shares failed to be delivered at the time it was supposed to be delivered. The following day, 38 million shares continually failed to be delivered. Okay, I'll describe. So the other thing is, it's these numbers are cumulative. They're not. This is a rolling count number. I'm sorry. This is not a number that you add the failures to deliver, and the math is a little bit odd for that. And I'll describe why that. It actually makes things a little bit confusing for the end person to try to study this data. But fortunately, we have computers nowadays, and this is also the first time that APE shares have been traded. So we know that there are no fails previous to this time, which is also interesting. So let's just put that information up to the top right, and then we'll have a look at other FTDs that were out there, right? AMC had FTDs last year, and I charted out their FTDs, right? They had tons of FTDs, lots of it. It was considered scandalous for AMC to have FTDs, but the max number of FTDs that AMC had last year, which is the max number of FTDs ever for the most part, was 27 million, which is scandalous, by the way. And that happened on January 27th. That was around the same time as the GameStop event, which was the price of GameStop going up astronomically. So AMC, it turned out, had a large number of failures to deliver at that point in time. Okay, that's a big deal. The day after that, the price of AMC went up significantly. It went from $5 almost to about almost $20. Okay, so this is why we have the day after the max FTDs, because we can see that there's a big price differential there. The FTDs got closed out for AMC on, I believe, on the 28th. Because if you look at the number of FTDs, it decreased significantly. They settled, and the way that they settled in this case was a close. They closed the failure, meaning that they bought the stock, and as you can see, the price of the stock of AMC went up significantly. It went from $5 to almost $20 on that second day. Okay, that was not the max price, by the way, of AMC. Last year, the max price that AMC achieved was $62.55. And that was on a day that had 5.4 million FTDs. 5.4 million fails to deliver. Okay. Those deliveries, the following day after that, the price of the stock came down a little bit because, again, we're looking at the max price. But the FTDs there were still a lot of FTDs. They didn't all get settled out yet. Note that I said settled, not closed. In this case, after the max price, the FTDs were settled. And I'll describe what that means later. Okay. But that's the important thing to know. Note that the SEC gives a settlement date. They don't give a close date, they give a settlement date. Also, let's look at GameStop now. If we look at GameStop also had a large number of FTDs, a scandalous number of FTDs. Their max FTDs was about 2,100,000. Okay. And at that time, the price of GameStop was $76.79. Now this is pre-split adjusted, so you have to multiply that price by 4 for GameStop. $76.79 times 4, right? Because we know that GameStop did a 4-to-1 split via dividend. We also know, okay, the day after that max FTDs, which by the way they didn't close out a lot of them. I think they closed out some of them, because they were forced to close it out because we had margin calls probably or something like that. The price of GameStop went to $147, almost $150 at that time. That's pre-split adjusted. Multiply by 4, that is equal to $600 for GameStop, almost. $600 a share for GameStop, okay, in terms of split adjusted numbers. Now, the max price of GameStop was not $150 split adjusted. It was $350 almost. That's the max price at the close, not the max price of GameStop. The max price of GameStop went to $480 intraday. But it ended that day at $350 almost, right? $347. And that was on January 28th. Okay? On the 29th, the price dropped significantly from that point in time. But there were, at that time, of $347 per share of GameStop, there were 1 million FTDs. Not 2 million, 1 million. So a large number of FTDs happen on not necessarily the max price. But we see that the max price was, we see at that time, the max price was about $350. You have to multiply that by 4 to adjust for the splits. That means you're talking about $1,400 a share of GameStop. Let me repeat, $1,400 a share, okay? That's the max price, and there were 1 million FTDs then, okay? The day after that, there was 138,000 FTDs. The price dropped significantly to $193. Split adjusted, that would be close to $600. That would be close to for $800, almost $800, right? Because it's multiplied by 4, right? The number of FTDs decreased significantly because they were settled. The price dropped significantly because they weren't closed out necessarily. They were settled. Okay, and I'll describe what that means afterwards. Again, so let's get back to these APE numbers. As you can see, the APE FTDs are 43.4 million fills. 43.4 million. Compare that to these previous two stocks that I mentioned, right? AMC, which had something like 27 million. At that time, the price of AMC went from $5 to $19.90. Again, That's not the max price of AMC. The max price of AMC happened only under about 5.4 million FTDs, okay? We're talking about 43.4 million FTDs. Significantly more than the current. That's significantly more than the previous high for FTDs at AMC. And again, it's about, it's almost 20 times more than the max FTDs for GameStop. And at that point in time, GameStop went to a $600 price equivalent. Okay. So this gives you an idea of where AMC could potentially go to. Okay. So I never expected 43 million FTDs. Again, the other thing is to note, these FTDs are from the SEC and they're for trading days. They're for trading data. This does not include fails to deliver from the dividend from the APE dividend that everyone was supposed to receive who's an AMC shareholder. AMC shareholders are supposed to receive APE dividends. Tons and millions of people did not receive their their APE dividends being an AMC shareholder. Okay, this is a T+2 settlement. Okay, the dividends that were supposed to be received is a T+0. When you're supposed to receive your dividend on the day of the dividend, you didn't get it. This is not listed. Okay, that's a failure. That's a dividend failure, which is a different type of failure. Okay, so we know that this does not include the dividend fails. Okay. So again, let's go back to the APE failures to deliver. This is the raw data. Now we know that T+2 settlement means that the delivery is 2 days after the trade. Now we know that there were no fails for the first 2 days of trading because you didn't have time to fail yet. It takes 2 days for settlement. And then you have a settlement failure. That's basically what it means. You have a settlement failure. There were no trading of APE shares prior to 8/22 because that's when the dividends were actually provided to AMC shareholders. Right? No one had APE shares before that. At 8/22, at market open, everyone was supposed to have APE shares. We know that a bunch of people did not. We also know, therefore, that there was a lot of this implies that there was a lot of basically phantom or synthetic shares of AMC, right? So basically that means that you have shares of people who bought AMC shares who probably got them from naked short selling. And so these are phantom shares that came into existence as a result of that. Okay. We also know that on 8/24, that there were 43 million fails, right? These were shares that were sold to buyers on 8/22. T+2, 2 days, right? It takes 2 days to actually fail. Okay. So these were shares that were sold, and they were naked short sold, right? We know that the sellers did not have access to the shares which they sold on 8/22, and that's what's caused a delivery failure. Okay. Nobody had access before 8/22, and we know the sellers definitely didn't have access, otherwise they wouldn't have failed. Now, there's only one group of people who are allowed to naked short sell, and that's basically what happened, right? So, therefore, okay, so first off, all of the fails to deliver on that very first day are a result of naked short selling. Okay, that's the only way it could be. It's not a result of anything else. It's a result of naked short selling, okay? The only people who are legally allowed to naked short sell are market makers. Okay. And market makers are provided a superpower to naked short sell. And they're provided that superpower by the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, because they're supposed to make a market for the purpose of providing liquidity. Okay. We'll describe what that means. Again, this is the reg show information that's from the SEC. I talked about the first part about what a naked short sell is and what failure to deliver is. Then it goes on to talk about other possible failures, okay, just to confuse the issue. Failures to deliver may result from either a short sale or a long sale. Well, the only way you can get a failure from a long sale is if you don't have the cash to pay the person that sold you the shares. Okay. So from a long sale, it's the person who doesn't have the cash, and your broker won't let you buy the stuff without the cash, unless they have a margin account, in which case they'll put up the cash in terms of margin, and you have a debt that you owe to the broker. So failures to deliver don't really happen for long sales because your broker won't let it happen. Okay. Anyway, for example, human or mechanical errors or processing delays can result from transferring securities in physical certificate rather than book entry form, thus causing a failure to delivery on a long sale within the standard settlement period. This is 2022. Okay. I don't know how many people are actually using physical stock certificates at this date and time. Almost everything is done via electronically through the DTCC, the Depository Trust Clearing Corporation. So it's all electronic. Computers are doing the transferring of securities. Okay. So this is no longer relevant in terms of mechanical errors or processing delays, right? Mechanical errors or processing delays. No, that doesn't exist in 2022. It should not exist. Otherwise, why the frick do we have the DTCC? They're supposed to make failures non-existent. Okay, that's the whole purpose of the DTCC. A fail may also result from naked short selling. For example, market makers who sell short thinly traded, illiquid stock in response to customer demand may encounter difficulty in obtaining securities when the time for delivery arrives. Now, thinly traded means that there are very few shares of the stock that are traded. In the case of APE, there were 43 million shares. APE was that failed to deliver. That is not a thinly traded stock. That is a stock that's traded at a ton. In fact, on A22, it was the most popular stock of the day. People were buying APE shares like crazy. Over 120 million shares of volume. That is not a thinly traded stock. 120 million shares of volume? No. That is a very thickly traded stock, okay? So, it is not a thinly traded, it is not an illiquid stock. Well, it may be illiquid because the people who sold the stock obviously didn't have the stock. I call that fraud, okay? But in either case, the people who sold the stock did not have the stock, okay? Naked short selling is not necessarily a violation of federal securities laws or the Commission's rules. In fact, in certain circumstances, naked short selling contributes to market liquidity. For example, broker-dealers that make a market in a security generally stand ready to buy and sell the security on a regular and continuous basis at a publicly quoted price, even when there are no other buyers or sellers, right? They're basically saying, we will buy even if there's nobody else buying or selling, okay? So they will buy. Thus, they're called market makers. They will be the other side of the trade for you, okay? Market makers must sell a security to a buyer even when there are temporary shortages of that security available in the market. This may occur, for example, if there is a sudden surge in buying interest in that security. There certainly was for APE. There was a huge surge. Everyone was buying that day. 14,500 buy orders for 3,500 sell orders on Fidelity. Okay? Most people were buying. The price of APE went up significantly during the first hour. There were 10 trading stops on that day. Okay? This may occur if there is a sudden surge in buying interest in that security, or if few investors are selling a security at the same time. Nobody was selling. Nobody. The only people who were selling were market makers who were naked short selling. Okay? Because it may take a market maker considerable time to purchase or arrange to borrow that security, a market maker engaged in bona fide market making, particularly in a fast-moving market, may need to sell the security short without having arranged to borrow the shares. Certainly that was the case for AMC. 43 million shares of volume were naked sold out of a volume of 120 million. That's about a third, okay? I'm sorry, that's about a third. A third of the shares were sold naked short. Okay, this is especially true for market makers in thinly traded illiquid stocks, as there may be few shares available to purchase or borrow at a given time. This is not a thinly traded stock. 120 million shares of volume is not thinly traded. That is very thickly traded. It's the number one stock that sold on that day. and for the following days, okay? Market makers were basically putting out counterfeit shares into the market and selling them with the intention that they would buy it back later. And you know what? They didn't have the stock to buy back later. I'll explain why. Okay. Millions of shares of APE were traded. This is the most popular stock on the New York Stock Exchange for several days. As I said earlier, it is not thinly traded. This is a stock that was hard to source. Very few people were willing to sell their APE shares. Many people did not even receive their APE shares in order to sell them, okay? This was a stock that was hard to source. And the price discovery mechanism failed because of market makers creating stock that didn't exist. Okay? So, many people still today, have not yet received their APE shares. And yet, the APE shares were naked sold short. So, what does that tell you? Okay? What does that tell you? So if you looked at my previous video, you'll note that we've got the APE price and failures on the top left. And just below that, we've got the APE prices and the volume data for the days traded. I had another column for the quantity of fails. I put them in there for starting at the settlement date, and as we can tell, the first 2 days there was no fails because it takes T+2 in order to fail. And the way that failures to deliver work is it's a running count. What is reported is what's known as the current fail, which are the old fails plus any new fails minus whatever is settled. That's the way that works, okay? So when you look at 5 million shares at the bottom, which failed to deliver on 8/31, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you can add up all the previous fails to deliver, right? And then try to figure out what the total fail to deliver is. It doesn't work like that. All you have is the current fail to deliver. That's the only information that's reported. But we can do some algebra. Okay, the current fail minus the old fail. If we take the current fail and we subtract the old fails, we get new fails minus whatever is settled. Okay, we can multiply that by -1, and then we get old fails minus current fail, and that will result in whatever is settled minus new fails. Okay, this is just some little bit of algebra that I'm doing on it. Okay, we can't tell you how many shares are actually settled because you need to subtract new fails. Let me repeat that. You can't tell how many shares need to be settled because you need to subtract whatever new fails there are. And that information is not given. So, it can be sometimes very difficult to tell what's going on with failures to deliver as you only have a running count. However, with APE, we have a unique situation in terms of the stock didn't trade before. There were 0 fails as a result, by definition, right? How can you fail? Anyway, we know that because of the T+2 settlement, the failure to deliver was a result of a sale that happened 2 days earlier. So I'm adding another column, and that column is the sale which results in the delivery failure. So the sale happened 2 days earlier, 43 million shares. Bang, 2 days earlier, okay? Those sales have to be naked shorts. Otherwise, it would not result in a delivery failure in 2 days. Has to be naked shorts. No question about it, right? Now, the naked short selling means that you're selling something that you don't have. You didn't borrow the shares from anyone. You didn't do a locate. This creates what's known as a phantom or a synthetic share in the market. When you normally do a short sale, you're supposed to borrow the share from someone, sell the share to somebody else. Now you owe shares to the person you borrowed it from, and you owe dividends to the person that you borrowed it from. And you owe them a borrow fee as well, okay? And that's how that takes care of short sales. And that's how that prevents the creation of phantom or synthetic shares. But naked short sales create phantom and synthetic naked short sales create phantom and synthetic shares. Only market makers are allowed to naked short sell because the idea is that they're providing liquidity to the market, and they will clear out or settle those trades very rapidly. Okay, that is the idea. So I'm going to add a third. I'm going to add a third volume, and that volume is a percentage of total volume, of which are naked short sales. Okay. And we compare that to the sale, which resulted in the failure, in the delivery failure. Okay. So if we look at that, we can see a couple things. Okay. We can see that 35% of all trades on that very first day, which were naked short sales, is what caused the 35% of all the shares traded on the very first day of APE, on the very first day of trading of APE, was basically naked short sales, synthetic shares which didn't exist. Okay, they just poof came into existence. Those shares were not necessarily cleared out. The following day, if you take that same math and you divide the amount of delivery failures and you go back and you track back to the amount of sales that took place, right? You're saying 37%. The day after that, it was almost 70%, 68.7%. Okay, so and we go on and on, right? So when 32% to 68 to almost 70% of the total sales volume results in a failure to deliver, that's going to have an effect on the price of the stock. That's going to decrease the price of the stock significantly. Okay, think about that. Over 2 out of every 3 shares of stock that were traded on that day magically came into existence. They didn't exist before. Okay, 2 out of every 3 shares of stock that was traded did not exist before. That's a naked short sale. That clearly means that if you're selling stuff that doesn't exist, 2 out of every 3 trades, you're depressing the price because that price should be significantly higher, right? People who receive shares that were not shares, basically, okay? Now, a lot of people might say, hey, doesn't all this even out, right? The FTDs are just a fraction of what they once were. But just have a look at it. The FTDs have decreased significantly. And it looks like the market makers have settled, whatever settled means. I'll talk about that later. And the APE shares are just a fraction of what they sold for. The price of the APE shares have come down significantly. So therefore, the question is, why do we care, right? It's down a lot. Granted, it's down a lot from where it was, but 5.6 million shares failed to deliver, have still failed, right? Every single day of trading that was listed failed to deliver. Every single day of trading that was listed failed to deliver. So the failure was not taken care of. There were new fails, or the old fails were not settled. Okay. Now, it got settled down to the point of 5 million fails. But think about that. 5 million shares of stock was sold that didn't exist at the end of that. That's a lot, right? Anyway, so I'm saying that when 2 out of every 3 shares that are traded on any particular day results in a failure to deliver, that is not supplying liquidity to a market. That's called flooding a market with counterfeit shares. And that prevents price discovery. Let me repeat that. When 2 out of every 3 shares traded results in a failure to deliver, you are not supplying liquidity into the market. You are flooding the market with counterfeit shares, and you're preventing price discovery. Okay. Now, why does it matter? Let's look at let's look at APE shares and what the price of APE shares are. This is the quote from Fidelity, and I'll break down what this quote means. So, this is for APE shares. APE shares at the time of this quote, sold for $4.90. Yeah, it's for APE shares. And if we look at the date of this quote is September 16th, 2022. And it happened after the market closed. Okay. So that's for APE shares. The nice thing about this quote is it also describes what short interest is. So if you didn't know what short interest is information in this quote that is provided twice a month. It's not provided every single day. We don't know what the short interest is apart from twice a month. That's the only time that it's provided. So the short interest data is provided twice a month. This data represents shares that have been sold short and not yet purchased. Let me repeat. This data indicates shares that are sold short and not yet repurchased. The data is typically viewed as an indicator of pessimism in that security. Short interest data is available for SEC securities listed on the New York Stock Exchange and on NASDAQ. Okay. They also talk about the short percentage, but I'm going to go skip down and look at the days to cover. The number of short shares divided by the security's average 30-day volume. This tells you how many days it would take to repurchase the short shares outstanding based upon that security's average 30-day volume. Okay? Gives you an idea. Finally, there's one other piece of information in here which talks about FINRA. Okay? FINRA members are required to report their short positions as of settlement on the 15th of each month or the preceding business day if the 15th is not a business day. And 2, as of the settlement on the last business day of the month. The reports must be filed by the second business day after the reporting settlement day. So you have 2 days after that reporting settlement day to file. FINRA compiles the short interest data and provides it for publication on the 8th business day after the reporting settlement date. So there you go. 8 business days after the reporting settlement date, the FINRA numbers will be updated, which includes the short interest numbers. That's good to know. Okay, so these numbers will be old by the time you see them, by the time anyone sees them, because they are not current short interest. They are short interest from, at best, 15 days ago, right? Or even longer. So what is the short interest for APE? 9.62%. Hang on 1 second. So, again, short interest is reported here. And as we can see, short interest is 9.62%. That's 9.62% of all the outstanding shares. The share short, which is being reported, is 49.73 million shares. 49.73 million shares. And they're saying that takes 1.93 days to cover. Okay, so let's add a column here. And let's see what that means. Let's see. Yeah, let me see what that means. So we know that 37 million shares have been quote unquote settled, right? So from the 43 million minus 5 million, which is the last number of shares, we know that there were 43 million shares at first. And we now have a failure to deliver of 5.6 million shares as of August 31. So approximately 37.8 million shares have been quote-unquote settled. Okay. Now we're adding another column over here to the short interest millions. Okay. 49.73 million shares. That's a lot less. I mean, 49.73 million shares is a lot more than the number of shares that have been settled. For all intents and purposes, basically what's happened is that the naked shorts from market makers, which resulted in failures to deliver, have been converted into a short position via the locate borrow category. What does that basically mean? It means that they took those fails to deliver and said, hey, we located some shares out there that you could potentially buy. So we know these people have shares, so you might be able to buy it from those people. So at that point, you've located shares that you could buy. As long as you have the cash to buy them, we'll consider that you have bought them or that you have borrowed them. Even though you haven't borrowed them yet, we'll consider you could potentially buy it to close your shares out. So they are allowed a locate borrow exemption. And as a result of that, those shares have not been closed out. The failures have not been closed out. They've been settled. And settled in this case, I believe, means converting from a naked short position to a short position. Okay. All of those shares that we see that have been settled, they've been converted from naked short to short. And they've been converted in such a way that it's probably via the locate/borrow feature, category. Okay. So 37 million shares of the original 43 million have been converted. Okay. And that's where we stand. That's what I think is going on. So with that, I'd like to just say thanks for listening. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only, and for you to understand where I'm coming from and what I think. These are my thoughts, okay? It is September 17th at the time I'm making this video. The slides were made on September 16th. Thank you for watching this, and good night and goodbye.